One of the most discouraging things that you'll ever encounter as a modeler is something called decal silvering. Today, I'm going to show you how to fix that after it happens. Now, we've all been there, putting hours upon hours into this build, laying down the most beautiful paint job you've ever done. Then you go and put on the decals super methodically. Come back to it the next morning and...
oh no! No!
Now, if this happens, don't worry. There's something that you can do to fix it. Even if those decals were made before the age of disco, you can fix them. But first, a little bit of education on what decal silvering is and isn't. Silvering is when the decal has not properly adhered to the surface, and now you have trapped air in between the decal and the paint. This will cause the carrier film to look a little weird. There are several ways to reduce the likelihood of silvering, or there's products out there to use that do not involve waterslide decals. That is more about the application process, and I will be making a separate video in the future on that. Here are a few test decals that I applied that in the end silvered. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a few experiments, and in the end, gonna fix all these. Now, the most important piece in the process is decal solvents, setters, softer fixers, whatever they're putting on the bottle these days. So as far as what decal solvent to use, I've not really found one out there that is the magic bottle that'll work perfect for every decal in the market. I've got a video up above that goes over those tests. The next thing you need to know is what a decal solvent is. Well, they work in one of two ways, or technically both. They are melting the decal so it can conform to the surface, or you have some that have an adhesive element to it to help it bond to the surface, generally before you apply. Type 1 is to melt the decal to the surface, and some of them are more melty, I guess might be the word, than others. So keep that in mind when applying them. Type 2 solvents will have an adhesive component on that. Now, every decal in existence has some kind of adhesive on it. That's why you don't want to leave the decal in the water over time, as that adhesive can leach off of the decal and just mix into the water. These solvents with an adhesive are great for old decals, but they can be the trick for some of those stubborn decals from brands that, skip on decal quality. The first misconception with the process is that you use the decal solvent only once. No, you're probably going to have to apply several layers to get it to work just right and conform. Now, if you still have silvering after that, we need a bit more intervention. With this, you want to work from a delicate to a hard, softer, and in some situations, I'll show you the nuclear option. For the first test, I want to use Mr. Mark Setter on top and see what happens. Normally, you would put this under the decal as it has the adhesive to it. So we're going to see how that does. For the next test subject, I have pure carrier film from one of those print your own decals sheet. In the first area, I'm going to use Mark Setter. And in some situations when you're doing this, it can be very visually pleasing, as you can see the setter kind of percolating through, and then sometimes you can see it's not doing much of anything. Remember, we're trying to get the air out from underneath the decal and have it stick. Sometimes to help this along, you might need to poke it with something sharp to allow the decal setter to get underneath and work from both sides. In the next area, I'm going to use DSPIAE Decal Softener. I've been pretty surprised with this one, as it is pretty hot, so in the end, pretty effective. Now in the next area, I got the old but good softener, Solvaset. definitely in the hot territory. If you're using something like cartograph decals, it could be a bit too much. Next up is these Tacom decals. We're going to go to the, let's say, DEFCON 2 level. I'm going to put on Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. At this point, some of you are thinking, wow, he is crazy. You're right, but these have worked great for me in the past with some of these issues. But we're now getting into extreme category. We only are going to use the DEFCON 2 level if all the other stuff didn't work. Now, we know that it's going to be pretty good at melting the decal film because it's designed to kind of, thin and melt paint. Placement is key. You do not want to mess up the paint. Remember, paint thinner. You also do not want to have too much on there because then you can get into a crater-like effect, kind of like this. Also, after you put on the solvent, don't play with it. Let it sit. The ink on the decal is going to be affected, and that can mess up the image, and you kind of have these ink smearing, streaking. It just doesn't look good. Now, DEFCON 1, nuclear option. Tamiya extra thin. Yes, you heard me right. This solvent is definitely going to work because it's melting plastic, so the decal is not going to have a chance. I've used this in a few different cases with some really old, bad decals, but it's not something that I'm going to use on every build. Only in certain situations. It's the nuclear option. So same rules that apply for the leveling thinner. Be gentle, let it sit. And here we are after 24 hours. DSPIAE worked well. Solvaset worked well, but I got a little bit of pooling that you can see there. It could be residue, could go away. You might not even see it when we put down the matte coat. Same for this example, the Mark Setter. For the other Mark Setter, it looks much better, but we got some of these little bubbles that we're gonna need to have some TLC on. The Mr. Leveling Thinner, quite well. Ignore one spot, as this is painted on the sheet of clear plastic, and I think I scratched out the paint. So that's not the decal silvering, it's what happens when you put decal over clear plastic. Played with some of the other decals here. These decals are old enough that they could be in a retirement home. Got the bubbles with that method, so what now? Lots of repeating the same process, maybe going hotter. Gonna try maybe MLT on the New Jersey decal. And after that, just be patient, come back after several hours to overnight and check our progress. And here is our results after all the tests. The DSPIAE worked quite well. Solvaset, a little bit of bubbles. And then Mark Setter worked well with the clear film. We still have some bubbles and stuff to work with those main decals. Now for the Tacom decals, we've got the leveling thinner, and we also got the extra thin, and it worked out pretty well. There's a few little things that are totally my goof on it, but effectiveness pretty good. So I did a few tests kind of off screen, and I want to just check a couple other variables and partly create a good thumbnail. And was able to get the bubbles and everything, the silvering, out pretty well with some of the techniques learned below. So Buckeye Blitz here turned out pretty well. A few little bubbles, but you can see some discoloration where whatever I had just kind of messed with the paint. And that's kind of another thing that I noticed with some of these. There's a whole lot of surface tension with a lot of these, and I don't know if you guys have any tips for it. You can see in the Mark Softer and then the Mark Fit, there's some pooling going on. Need to figure out, but there is a few different ones out there that don't have quite so much surface tension that I might play around a little more with. I was thinking there could be some other variables why it's pooling so much. Don't really find that in the my actual models that I build usually, but I don't know. Maybe it very much is technique, but you could see in the previous videos where it just would just kind of glob up, and then you have the pooling, and then you're going to have the cratering. And so do as I say, not as I do. Also tried a few new stuff like the VMS and also some Vallejo decal softer. This was specifically the Vallejo decal softer, and it must have had some kind of adhesive thing to it because it was kind of milky, and boy was it thick. It felt like I was just lobbing on some flat paint with a little bit of decal softener in it. And here is a good example of being impatient and going too hot too fast. Now, in some situations, they will wrinkle up and it's fine, but what happened with this is it wrinkled up and didn't suck down. It just stayed wrinkled and looked horrible. Step 1. If the decal solvent you were using was having an effect, it just might need a few more applications. Start with that. Even if it's 4 applications, that's so much better than instantly ruining your subject. Step 2. Test a decal from the sheet on a mule first with other solvents. Decals and solvents are like coworkers. Some will just never get along whatsoever, and for reasons that escape me.
Why are you the way that you are?
Some collaborate really well. Some are like Mormons, cartograph specifically, and get along in many cases nothing more than just water. But don't give them anything that's a strong drink. They would not be able to handle it. Do a trial run instead of just going straight to your subject, potentially causing a lot of work, removing the decal, and starting over down the road. As far as a scale to see like which ones are hotter than the other, I tried making a video, got it linked above. There's a lot of variables. As far as with this test in there, I mean, VMS, DSPIAE, they're pretty hot, and that might be something to put at the top of the scale, but there's too many factors for everything below. Step 3, if none of these work, try Mr. Color leveling thinner. Not too thick, avoid touching it at all. It's going to work pretty fast. Don't mess things up. Now for our final scenario, well, first I would question you why you would be using such old and crappy decals, but you know, I've been there, I get it. So time for the nuclear option.
Shoot me my nuclear weapons, I can't do it, I can't do it!
Extra thin cement. This should only be used in special situations. Be very careful with placement because it's definitely not going to get along with the paint. Remember, patience is key with this. Shortcuts, they're just going to lead to challenges down the road. But if you go through these steps, you should be able to fix any sort of decal issue.